Hello everyone. Do you think our dogs and cats and other animals have souls? And what happens to them after death? When we lose our pets, it hurts us very much. Often because of this pain we may not notice how even after death, they try to contact us and console us. Do our deceased animals hear us? It is believed that animals hear their owners and stay close to them until the owner suffers from the pain of loss. Then they go to the animal paradise, which in the USA and United Kingdom is often called the Rainbow Bridge or Bifrost. It is featured in Scandinavian legend and in poems that were written to help grieving about pets to cope with the loss.
I heard two stories. The cat met his little owner in another world, a boy who had been dead for almost 20 minutes. Clinical death. The cat led the child to the light and then to the angel, who returned the baby to earth. When the child came to life, he told everything in details. The second story is very famous. A man was driving along a night road when suddenly his long-dead dog stood in front of his car. He wagged his tail and seemed to be waiting for the owner to get out of the car and pet him. The man came out, and he was well aware that the dog had died several years ago. But just when he got out of his car, a truck crashed into it at great speed. The man survived only because he got out of the car. The dog disappeared.
It is very painful to lose loved ones. I had a cat. I found him as a kitten thrown out on the road. 3 kittens were still blind and thrown out in a box. It was near private houses and dogs were running around in the wild forest nearby, and a car would drive over the box and the blind babies were doomed to death. My husband and I fed them with a pipette, fed them through pet stores, and found food for babies. They grew up and we gave them away to good people and kept one for themselves. I loved him very much. When he lay down in my arms, it seemed to me that I could hug all the universes of space with my love. He was a reveler and could disappear even for a day. But I felt everything was fine, and when he was 8 years old, he once again asked to go for a walk. Everything seemed to be as usual, but my heart was anxious. It seemed to me that he was looking like saying goodbye. But he really wanted to go and couldn't stop him. He didn't return. I saw him in my dream and he says that the dogs killed him. He showed his side first, and then the paw was bitten there. And he could not escape. He showed me where he was. I ran in the morning. It was winter, the snow was deep and I dug up. There was heavy snowfall in those days, and there was my boy. I have had cats and still have them. But the pain doesn't go away, even though years have passed. In the dreams he shows me that everything is fine with him. I miss him exactly.
I usually don't write comments, I just read them. But once I paid attention to one person's question about animals. Whether they have heaven or hell. I had a cat, she lived for 13 years. My niece brought it to me, since my sister was not a fan of keeping animals at home. I felt sorry and took Sofa with me. For the first 6 months she did not accept me as her mistress. She did all sorts of nasty things to me, but then she fell in love with me. And even at night could not sleep without me. And when she died, I couldn't calm down for a long time, I cried every day. But one day in a dream I saw a large aquarium with water and my cat was drowning in the water. I realized that she was drowning in my tears and stopped crying. Then one day in a dream I heard a loud sound, either meow or mom. I immediately understood that Sofa was calling me. And saw myself in front of huge openwork gates. And in the depths. At a short distance. A huge wall of fire. Without end or edge in width. And up to the sky in height. I realized that I could not get out of there or even move. But suddenly I heard again that my cat was standing behind the gate. Crying and calling me. In despair. I called her for help. And with her paw. For some reason easily. She opened the heavy gate. And I was able to jump out of there and run after my cat. Who was moving away somewhere towards the light. Then I woke up. Now I know for sure that there is hell. I saw it. But I still do not understand how I ended up there. And how my cat was able to come to my aid in such a place.
It happened to my beloved dog. He was an ordinary mongrel, his name was Bobby. He died of old age. And then a month later, I had a dream that he was standing across the street from me. I shout to him, "Bobby, go home." And he answered me, "I'm already on my way." And he began to cross the road, and halfway there he turned into a small light-colored puppy with brown spots. And a week later, at my work, a puppy came to the porch. The guards let him into the hall. And they say, "Oh, he is so cute," and he goes straight to my office. He was nearby. He looked like a puppy in my dream. I told him, "Come in." He walked over to my desk, twirled around, yawned, and went to sleep. My Bobby had been living with us for 7 years now, having been reborn into this puppy. I think if we sincerely love someone, they come back to us. I believe in reincarnation, I believe.
Of course our deceased relatives hear us. Many times. In difficult moments or incomprehensible situations. I asked Dad, "Dad, help me." And the situations was resolved immediately. The same thing with my mom. But that's not all. I had a cat, my beloved, dear, first kitty. We had a very strong connection with her during her life. So, she helped me even after death. When I got sick, I asked, "Bonnie, help me," and fell asleep. I woke up 2 hours later, nothing hurts. And she saved me from death many more times. She came in my dreams. For many years I felt her presence nearby. So we are heard and seen not only by our relatives, but also by our dear and beloved animals.
Over the years, I decided to visit my grandmother's grave. I haven't been there for 10 years. I took a friend and, based on the descriptions given by my parents, I went looking. We wandered around for about 2 hours without success. We could not find anything when a friend suggested that I mentally turn to my grandmother, with a request to show the way. I did so. And then a cat jumped out from somewhere and started running ahead of us, meowing. I told her that we have nothing to treat her with. We only had sweets with us. And the cat continued to cry and ran in front of us. And then sharply turned left and sat on the grave. I looked, and that was my grandmother's grave. That cat spent about 5 minutes with us, and somehow slipped away unnoticed. I didn't even notice at what moment she disappeared.
When my daughter was laying on her funeral service in church. During the service a small kitten ran into the church and jumped around the priest and clung to the cassock. As soon as the funeral service ended, the kitten disappeared without a trace. It was my baby who came to say goodbye. She will always be 2 years, 4 months, and 4 days. And for the first 40 days, every morning I prayed in her room, in front of the icons. And a little dove flew to the window and sat on the windowsill. As I finished the prayer, it was sitting a little more and flew away. Once, I even went to the window and raised my hand to the glass. And the little dove wasn't even scared. She looked at me. I have many such examples. This one is simply the most sharp in terms of impressions for me. It's not for nothing that they say that small coffins are the heaviest. Take care of your loved ones. Enjoy every minute of the time you spend together. After all, at any moment this happiness can end.
I don't know how to explain what it was. It happened like this. In May, approximately 5 o'clock in the evening, I started to worry without rhyme at all. For some reason I thought that I urgently needed to run to the cemetery to see my mother-in-law. Without wasting any time, I ran to the bus stop, got into the bus and drove out of town. I walked another 1.5 km to the place. I was running, crying, I did not know why. I looked into the distance where my mother-in-law was buried and shouted to her. "I am already close, I'm running, don't worry." So I came running and saw that in the ceramic vase, in which I left the water when I came last time. The mouse was trying to get out with all its might. It jumped and couldn't jump to the top. And again drowned in the water. My heart began to beat so hard. I felt sorry for the mouse. I pulled it out. It had no strength. It laid down for a while and crawled somewhere. Immediately I felt at ease in my soul. I stood for about 10 minutes and talked with my mother-in-law. And I thought, why? Because of this mouse, I flew to the cemetery in the evening. Like crazy. There were no other options. It was because of the mouse. Such a huge cemetery, and it was necessary. It was at the mother-in-law's grave that the mouse had to be saved.
When my grandmother died at night, I went out into the cold hallway, and there a butterfly was fighting against the glass and could not free itself. I took it in my hands and released it into the sky. I remember exactly that when I came running, there were no butterflies. Then I left with my husband, and a year later we returned to visit my grandfather. I went to the bathhouse, entered it, and there was a swarm of butterflies. Exactly the same as the one I released on the day my grandmother died. And these butterflies, there were 8 of them, began to fly around me. And they weren't even afraid to land on me. I immediately thought about my grandmother and said hello to her. And then I released the butterflies. I came home to my grandfather and asked, how did a swarm of butterflies get in a hot bathhouse? It was very hot there. He was very surprised at my story. And said, it had never happened before. And he had never seen it. He went there before me to check it. And there were no butterflies. My beloved cat died. I was very worried because I blamed myself for not going to the vet on time. I think she saved my son with her death. My son received a very severe burn on his leg from the knee to the foot, so that all the skin came off. He was afraid of upsetting me and wrapped his leg in some paper for a week. Our kitty died. And a couple of days later I accidentally discovered that my son had a problem with his leg. We ran to the doctor. The wound was treated. Everything healed in 3 days. Though with such suppuration they predicted blood poisoning. The thoughts that it was my kitty, who took over his illness, came naturally. I cried a lot for my kitty. And then, 2 months later, late at night, a whole bunch of mosquitoes did not let me sleep. They got into my mouth, my nose, my ears. Despite the fact that we don't have mosquitoes at all, it was impossible to sleep. I started reading a book. The windows are closed. A moth flew out from under my bed. She began to crawl along my arm and stroke my skin with her proboscis. Then she sat down next to the photo of my cat and arranged her wings and antennae in such a way that in color and shape they were identical to my kitty in the photo. She was sitting like that for 20 to 30 minutes. The next day my husband returned from vacation. Kitty loved him very much. And he said that at night a similar butterfly was crawling on his head for a very long time. Do not hurt cats. Take them home. There will always be a little food for them. Cats that love you will take away your troubles and diseases. And they save you from death. Like Kitty perhaps saved my son.
I want to tell you about my brother, who died at 25. Everyone loved him. Because he was very kind, decent, handsome, and managed to do a lot of good in his short life. When we came to his grave the next day after the funeral, a very beautiful white owl was sitting on the grave. I picked it up. It wasn't afraid at all and didn't break free. Then it flew away. My brother's dog was also with us. She started rolling around the grave, snorting, her paws up, as if someone was playing with her. Then, when we came home, I told everyone. Wanda saw him. Because animals have different vision. We all asked her, Wanda, where is Andy? She ran around the room. And then stood up on her hind legs and stretched her muzzle to the corner of the ceiling. And then rolled around the floor again, snorting. As if someone was playing with her. That's how my brother showed us. That he was next to us.
I'd like to share my own rather mystical story. It happened to my dog, the German Shepherd Ralph. He was 3 years old, trained in everything, a certified guy. Smart and friendly, not aggressive. Everyone loved him. And so my daughter took Ralph to visit my mother in another city. My daughter was 17. We phoned each other often, there were no mobile phones back then. And 3 days later I wake up at night from a dog howling. It was Ralph howling, who was not at home. I was impressed and called my daughter. She told that Ralph was stolen. But she was afraid to tell me, knowing that I would be upset. The search for him was fruitless. I immediately got the train to them. My daughter told me that she went with a friend to visit her mother that had a baby and Ralph was tied up in the entrance to the playground. My daughter periodically went out to look at him. And then she came out, but there was no dog. He couldn't leave on his own. People in the yard told that they saw a woman and 2 men dragging a reluctant shepherd dog to the trolley stop, throwing it in and driving off in an unknown direction. The police did not want to search. I conducted my own investigation, identifying the thieves. We found a boy, a son of that woman. He hardly agreed to show the place they had taken Ralph to. We promised that his mother would not be punished. We took a taxi. It was completely dark, after knocking. This was a private house. I heard Ralph's voice. As we picked him up, everyone cried. So don't believe in mysticism. A week after the abduction, I found him and returned home. At night. In a dream. He told me about his misfortune and melancholy. We must listen to our intuition. And yes, it all exists, both the subtle world and our connection with it. Some are stronger, some are weaker.
My dog Fran, Husky. His age was 15 years, had been coming to me in my dreams for 4 years. That happened very often for almost 2 years, and then less and less. In a dream, we walked with him as in ordinary life. And the most amazing thing happened after his death. On the very first night after his death, I saw him in my dream along with my second dog Nika, lapdog. Her age was 10 years. Who died 15 years ago. She met him in another world and they wagged their tails to me, showing that everything was fine with them.
Now, I remind how I was feeling unwell. And our cat Smokey barely could walk. We brought her food to the place where she was resting. We were already starting to worry about her. But now I feel fine. And she also is cheerful. This is how our connection turns out.
How you could ask for forgiveness from your deceased animal. To do this, you have to write words coming from the depths of your heart on a piece of paper. Express everything that weighs heavily on your soul. Burn the message. And scatter the ashes to the wind. Also you can leave a note at the burial place of your pet. Our animals always feel our love and concern for them. That's all for today. Subscribe to the channel, leave your comment or a story and activate the notification bell not to miss our new videos. Bye bye.